Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. The Turbo Boost is finally here, giving players a new opportunity to fully gear out the character unshackled by any caps or restrictions. Now is the best time for you to be able to dive back in, whether you're looking to play a new alt or potentially as a returning player, to explore everything Season 2 has on the offer, with even more content happening over the next few weeks, but also an opportunity for you to finish out all of your seasonal achievements and seasonal rewards. And so far, the Season 2 meta has pretty much solidified. We know already which are going to be some of the strongest and the most competitive classes of the season. While playing the meta class isn't mandatory, it is definitely more optimal, especially if you're looking to have the easiest time completing all of your seasonal rewards. And while I definitely encourage everybody to explore all the different playstyles, I mean, I've been playing Outlaw Rogue through thick and thin, whether it's good, whether it's not, and there's definitely some joy when it comes to playing something you truly like. But if you're just looking to get a brand new alt that's competitive for the season, just so you can feel like you could really push that content, or if you're a returning player looking to just play something that's good without any nonsense, and when you're looking to reduce the stress of bugging through content, then I do want to go over the most popular and the most preferred classes that you should definitely look on bringing up to speed during the Turbo Boost event, highlighting primarily most popular choices and the most optimal classes that are being played right now in the season. As always, if you guys want to see regular coverage of the War Within expansion, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. When it comes to the class of Death Knight, Unholy is king right now. Actually, one of the best out there, and it gets to play with Sunland, which you didn't really get to play much in Season 1. Just a little bit here and there, but it's actually a very popular pick for a Season 2, especially in mad AoE content. Not only does this pack just implode mobs with diseases, but being able to spawn in a blood beast that also explodes, even after the nerfed it a couple of times, this thing is still highly effective. It's a very fast-paced spec that isn't bogged down by too many cooldowns, so it means that the overall gameplay is actually very, very engaging. This class right now is an absolute monster at endgame content, with the spec of Unholy absolutely dominating whether you're looking at raiding or whether you're looking at dungeons. So if you're looking for a one-stop shop when it comes to the class of Death Knight, it is an excellent pick right now for the rest of Season 2. When it comes to the class of Death Knight, right now, Vengeance is the better option, mostly because Havoc is a little bit undertuned. Like, it's not a bad melee by any measure, there's just other specs that are melee DPS that could take their spot in, like, dungeon content. You, of course, need a Demon Hunter for raids, but if you are going to play one, it looks like Vengeance does seem to be, like, the better option for the overall Season 2 meta, and hopefully we'll see a little bit more love for Havoc in the future. Vengeance as a spec, however, is very, very fast-paced compared to some of the other tanks, and involves a more active tanking playstyle that's a little bit more engaging. You're not going to be watching defensive cooldowns like a Warrior or a Paladin or any of those other classes. Instead, you have very, very short-term CC that are also highly impactful, so that means you'll have to rotate in pretty regularly, which adds to that engaging gameplay. It is also super tanky with Eldraki Reaver. It is a fantastic combo that allows you to be super self-sufficient. It also has some of the best crowd control in the game right now, which is where a lot of Vengeance strength, at least when it comes to endgame progression content like Mythic Plus Dungeons. It's super fun just having this amount of control in one singular class, and it is why it is one of the more popular options of the season. When it comes to Druids, right now, and usually almost always, Balance is the more popular pick that is favored by many in the community. It generally historically has been one of the more popular range specs in the game for multiple different reasons. Right now, it is a very good range to pick up at the Season 2 mark because it, 1, easier to get into, 2, has some of the best AoE damage in the game, which is part of the fun of the core Boomy gameplay. I mean, who doesn't like dropping Sunfires, Moonfires, and just letting Starfall melt everything around you? But it also has some of the best utility when it comes to dungeon content and just overall utility that is also usable in raids. Druids are right now in a really, really good spot, and with how easy it is to pick up a balanced druid right now, it is definitely the spec that's easy to recommend so far for this Season 2. Though if you're someone who wants to explore something less traveled, like a Feral Druid, you will actually have the stats to be able to swap it to Feral as long as you focus on Haste and Mastery as your two powerful options. And with a couple of trinkets and an agility weapon, you can actually explore a melee DPS counterpart if you want to, so Boomkin ends up being a fantastic spring point for many players that are looking to explore the class of Druid for the season. When it comes to the class of the Evoker, I think right now your best play is to pick up Dev, as it's actually finally really, really good when it comes to raids and dungeons. Even throughout the expansion like Dragonflight, Devastation had a little bit of an ups and downs when it comes to its popularity, especially after they introduced augmentation to the game, which kind of said, Devastation in the corner all by itself. But right now it has the spotlight. It is in a really good spot. Has some of the best, and I mean really actually the best damage when it comes to raid content and even dungeons. It is super bursty and also super easy to get into since they made Flame Shaper a very good hero spec, which while it does have an action component with Engulf, which doesn't mean you have to track a couple of dots in order to maximize its effectiveness, the playstyle itself is a little bit more passive that just amplifies the core of Devastation to some degree. And I think the combo playstyle that it offers is super easy to pick up for many players out there, and the playstyle right now, since it's not overly complex, with Devastation usually being considered as one of the more harder casters to get into, this would be the most approachable version of Devastation that I can easily recommend for the season. Then we have the class of Hunter, and I actually think Marksmanship would be the class, or spec rather, that I personally recommend. I know that everybody plays Beast Mastery, but it looks like the numbers recently have started to gravitate towards Marksmanship little by little, which is really good to see. I think BM is a perfect spec to just like get into a season, but once players get comfortable with the current set of dungeons and raids and are looking to just inch out a little bit more damage, Marksmanship actually starts to come out on top little by little. And right now it actually is looking quite a popular pick so far, mostly because the rework has been excellent. Like really giving Marksmanship a go, sitting down, giving the spec a proper chance, it's so fun. I actually really enjoyed whether you played the Dark Ranger playstyle with a Black Arrow, which synergizes so well into the rework of the whole precise shot mechanic that Marksmanship plays into, which got fixed a ton by the way. Big fan of that one specifically. But also the Sentinel is also very passive, but also very strong for content like AoE. It has excellent damage in raids and dungeons, and a pretty good set of utility no matter which hunter spec you play, plus additional utility that was missing when it couldn't run a pet, but now it doesn't need a pet, so you can do a lot more than ever before. Though of course Beast Mastery is a good alternative, like Marksmanship can be your starting point, but if you're just having a hard time with it, you can always pivot to Beast Mastery, which is a little bit easier to pick up, but definitely give Marksmanship a shot because they're looking very popular as of this moment. And then we have the class of Mage, which is one of my favorite options for the season, and I think right now would be the best time to, if you've ever wanted to play Arcane, this is the best season to finally give Arcane a go. There's a good chance you heard that Arcane is one of the more complex specs to play, especially if you played in expansions like Dragonflight. And that was generally true in that expansion, but in War Within they've done a good job to try to streamline the spec as much as they could. And while they did make it a little easier, it does still have quite a decent bit of complexity. It doesn't have a lot of buttons. I mean, between abilities like your Arcane Barrage, your Arcane Explosion, Arcane Blast, Arcane Missiles, there's not too many buttons for you to really press in between of the whole basic rotational components. But still, every single one of the buttons have a very specific uses behind them, so it is going to be still a slight learning curve either way. But in more cases than not, the spec comes down to buffing the damage of your Arcane Barrage as much as possible, which I actually think has gotten a little bit easier ever since they added the cooldown manager into the game. While not the most optimal or the perfect tool, the tracked buffs aspect of it does help out tremendously when it comes to picking up the spec, as it tracks a lot of the buffs that will amplify the damage of your barrages. So once you see those buffs active, knowing when to barrage becomes a lot easier without even having to get any specific add-ons or weak auras, as we now have in-game tools in order to help you track all of these things. With that, the playstyle of Spellslinger also helps a ton, as it's very passive but also kind of interactive, as it lets you play into more orb-based gameplay, just tossing the orb out for additional resources, and the passive nature of it just amplifies the core that is Arcane, which makes it a little bit easier for players that may have never experienced Arcane to really finally ease the way into the fun that it offers, especially when it comes to its big bursty AoE damage. Next, we have the class of the Monk. And when it comes to monks right now, I was having a hard time deciding which one would be the better one to recommend, but I think Mistweaver stands out a lot in this season. They're just overall very good. Whether we talk about raids or dungeons, they're a fairly popular pick, especially with both the raiding version and the Mythic Plus version of Mistweaver heavily focusing into a melee healer mechanic. So essentially, as you do damage with your kicks, punches, rising sun kicks, and all of your nature-based abilities, Mistweavers actually will get to be able to heal allies based on the damage that they do. So if you're someone who more or less knows how to do damage but doesn't really know how to heal, this is like the best transitionary type of playstyle that allows you to play around doing damage while also being able to support your allies at the same time. And with this playstyle being pretty strong in both raids and dungeons, it's like the easiest one to get into as like a DPS player who always wants to be able to heal a raid or a group of 5 players. Plus, their kit for dungeons is generally pretty good, with self-defenses to make them reliable, proper amounts of CC with Ring of Peace, and leg sweep, and incap, and interrupts of their own, so you always have something to do within dungeons, but also strong bursty healing, so if you ever are in trouble, you have plenty of tools to help your allies escape near danger. Next we have the class of Paladin, and for them, easily, I recommend the Retribution spec, which is by far one of the most popular DPS specs in the entire game right now. Paladin's popularity is well known when it comes to raids, dungeon, or even just casual content. Out of all the melee classes, this one is the one that's played the most. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're the strongest, but definitely they have got a huge portion of the community under their grasp. And the class fantasy of Paladin have always been excellent. Transmogs have been fantastic. Gameplay generally easy to get into, and they have a fantastic damage profile, great for raids, great for AoE, but also really good set of utility. So Paladins are really right now an awesome kit if you're just looking for a standalone strong melee that will likely stand the test of time all the way throughout the end of War Within. When it comes to the class of Priest, I honestly think if you have ever wanted to pick up a healer, this would be one of the best classes to grab up. Oracle Discipline is out of this world in just how strong it is. I think it's arguably the best healer for the season. It's not amazing in every single encounter in the raid, but it's generally really good. Where it really excels is in Mythic Pluses. It just becomes the most safest healer to run with, which makes him like the perfect answer for anybody looking to pick up healing. Oracle helps basically simplify the rotation a little bit, allowing you to focus on using your buttons to heal. A good portion of Discreet playstyle is using abilities like your Penance or Smites or to deal damage to foes while being able to heal an ally, which a lot of players do have a bit of a hard time getting the hang of in most cases because it is a really weird healing mechanic. But where a majority of its playstyle really focuses on right now is being able to passively deal damage while mostly focusing on healing your allies, which is where the Oracle playstyle really takes charge in, as it is more of like a preventative absorb-based playstyle that really highlights the healing aspect of Disc, which makes it very strong and a solid pick. And while Disc will always have a bit of a learning curve in raids, as it's always have had for like years now, I think it is much easier to pick it up, at least this variation of Priest, than ever before. Especially for someone who's focused on potentially running a lot of dungeons within this season, this ends up being, I think, the best option as of this moment. However, when picking a poison, if you got a taste for daggers as well as stealth, then Rogue would be honestly the best option. That being said, it's usually one of the harder classes to pick up, at least in comparison, after me getting the chance to play all of them within War Within. And while I normally would recommend my favorite, the spec of Outlaw, it is one that is very quirky. It's a ton of fun, it's gotten a lot more improved, and it's actually probably one of the best spots it's been in a decent bit of time. Like, it's just satisfying to play. But I think my recommendation would still be Assassination. This one has tested the This one has stood the test of time and have proven itself to be a very approachable option for many players out there, especially if you love this whole like bleeds, poisons, daggers, bursts, sustain that Assassination offers, which has a little bit of this like stealthy leanings, but also some of the more brutal blood-based leanings as well. And overall, this ends up being the most intuitive and straightforward rogue spec to pick up, with some of the most simple cooldowns to play around with. Whether you're playing around the 2-minute death mark or potentially the Kingsbane playstyle, it's like the general gameplay loop, the uptime, as well as the rotational changes between in cooldowns and out of cooldowns, the maintenance of the spec when it comes to your comp point building and spending. It is probably the easiest one for many players to grasp out there. But picking up Assassination also does help you pivot to other specs, like if Assassination is just not part of your taste, but you may want to give Subtlety a go. Assassination has basically similar gear requirements as Subtlety. You know, the daggers, the trinkets, and stats will be very, very similar to that spec. So at least it gives you like a pivot point if, let's say, Assassination just doesn't quite scratch that itch, but a more stealthier, more bursty spec of Subtlety may just do the trick. If you've been watching this video through the beginning and didn't skip around to the different classes, you probably would have noticed that I'm using the word straightforward a lot for many of the specs that I recommend, and Elemental falls in that same category. It is a very straightforward and an easy to pick up spec, whether you're looking for raids or dungeons. Enhancement is also good, Rescue is also very strong right now, but I feel like if you just want a no-nonsense that gets the results, Elemental right now is in the best position it ever been, with a very strong tier set that just offers you a lot of upfront damage, cooldowns that are super high highly impactful, but also quite a little bit of insta-cast damage, so mobility is not an issue if you're someone who wants to play slightly less of a standstill and cast type of a caster spec. And the damage of this spec can definitely not be undersold as the amount of raw power that you get through Ascendance. Whether we're talking about single target fights like raids or AoE like Mythic Plus, it is definitely one of the best damage out there with such a massive impact. Every time you pop your major cooldowns, you're all just going to be absolutely shredding everything that's in front of you. And the structure of Elemental right now is also pretty varied. You're not just spamming just fire, lava burst abilities or just lightning bolts either. You're mixing everything up bit by bit depending on the content. But all of those combinations that you get to play around with are pretty easy to pick up on, so it's really easy to get into the spec as of this moment. From there we have the class of Warlock, and I actually think the easiest one to get into right now for the season. There's a lot of good options between Affliction, Demonology, and Destruction, but I actually think Destro would be one of the better choices overall. It's really hard to tell if any of the Warlock specs are really perfect this season. They're not bad, but they don't necessarily stand out like some of the other options out there. But I do think Destruction is one of the better ones to get into, at least as of this moment. One, there's not too many buttons to get into, so the complexity of the spec is rather on a lower end. However, there's still quite a bit of depth with every single ability that you use, and some of the combos that you can weave in, and then you add the hero talents on top of it, which add additional depth, which makes Destro, while, kind of easy to start with, is still an engaging playstyle overall. And it has really good propensity for single target damage, but also even better cleave and AoE damage. Whenever you're fighting more than one enemy, Destruction is in its home field. Whether you're raining a bunch of chaos bolts on multiple targets, or if you're just drowning them full of rain of fire eternally, it is super highly impactful. This spec always makes huge plays when it comes to its overall damage, especially when there's any fights focused on a burst. And with how many fights in a raid right now that have some sort of a cleave component, it does give Destruction quite a bit of an edge in those types of situations. Finally, with the class of Warrior, I really do think you should definitely give Arms Warriors a go. They are pretty simple to get into, but they have such massively impactful damage. I mean, that is my favorite part when it comes to Arms Warrior, is every single mortal strike, every single button that you press has so much impact, whether it is the visual, the auditory, or just the amount of damage that it offers, like the big crits that pop up on your screen. I'm a sucker for big crit damage. Just watching these numbers go, it simply just does things to my brain. It just hits the right way, and it's just super enjoyable to see every single time. I can never get tired of it. But it also gets to play around with Colossus, which kind of amplifies that to the nth degree with the ability to demolish, so that's also pretty satisfying as well. But where it really has some of the most excellent damage output, way above other classes, is in its execute damage. Now, there's a handful of classes out there that do execute damage, but I don't think any of them do as well as Arms does. And I think it's always really cool whenever you have a class or a spec that's really good at this one thing, and it's maybe even better than everybody else at that one thing. And for Arms, landing those executes and finishing off foes is their bread and butter, which I think just adds towards more of the unique gameplay of that spec specifically. But with that, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very much appreciate it. Also, join our Discord community to keep up with any of the newer class changes or patch notes that may appear for the rest of the season, or if you just want to catch up with all the new 11.17 upcoming content. Also, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.